Any regrets?
No, I don't, because we did the right thing. We were there to protect Trump supporters from Antifa. We were there to protect and secure 2 permitted events on Capitol grounds where members of Congress were going to speak. The guys that went inside, they're not committing the crimes. In fact, they helped people. They helped the police and helped the people out.
He says he has no regrets. What do you say, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I would say to Stuart Rhodes. Go fuck yourself.
Okay.
You're a liar.
We didn't obviously get to beep that word out, but obviously this is personal to you, Michael. This is very personal to you.
Yeah, it's very personal to Michael Fanone. Obviously, that was on CNN Live this week as Stuart Rhodes was released from prison and went on TV. And that's what's going on these first week of the Trump administration. Over 1,500 pardons for all the January 6th extremists. And you're talking the leaders of the Oathkeepers and the Proud Boys, and now they're back on the streets. The police that were involved, guests who've been on the show, Aquilino Ganell, Harry Dunn, of course, Mike Fanone, are facing, they'll probably face retribution. Stuart Rhodes' ex-wife is scared because he's threatened her because she testified against him. I mean, it's a very, very dangerous situation. And the extremism that we're seeing is very real, coming from the very top of the White House, and everyone recognizes this, and it's a very way it's something we're up against. This week, Mehdi Hassan had Senator Chris Murphy on because we're also doing the confirmation hearings, and here's what Chris Murphy had to say about the situation and this extremism we face.
You asked Trump's candidate for UN Ambassador, Elise Stefanik, this week, quote, "What do you think of Elon Musk doing 2 Heil Hitler salutes at the president's rally?" She, of course, refused to accept it was a Heil Hitler salute. Musk has suggested they weren't Nazi salutes. You think they are. I think they are. What does it... My question then is, what do you make of those 2 Heil Hitler salutes? What do they make Musk? Like, it's all very well saying, okay, he did a Nazi salute. Let's say he did. Yeah. What does that make Musk? Does that make Musk a Nazi? Does that make him a Nazi sympathizer? What are the consequences of that?
I mean, listen, maybe you could excuse that gesture if it wasn't coming from somebody who has a consistent history of identifying themselves with neo-Nazis and with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. He literally amplifies some of the most vicious anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on Twitter. He just endorsed the far-right, essentially neo-Nazi party in Germany. And so when that guy does something that looks suspiciously identical to the Nazi salute, you might come to the conclusion that it is. And listen, what I think is so dangerous about this broader moment is that there are these signals being sent to really dangerous fringe, violent groups on the right. Fringe right groups, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, that Trump's with you. The pardons essentially were a message that there is immunity for political violence. And all throughout Telegram and far-right channels on Monday night, that Musk neo-Nazi salute was being amplified as evidence.
Nick Fuentes thinks it was a Nazi salute.
I mean, Proud Boys, other groups saying Trump's got our back, right? The white, the white supremacy cause is back in vogue, and that makes for an explosive moment, politically and physically, in our political space right now.
Yeah, an explosive moment politically and amongst our country. It is extremism in the real way. It's not just online now. As you know, this means they're back. They're back in the political sphere. And believe it or not, Trump himself was asked, do these pardons welcome them back? And here's his answer.
The leaders of the Proud Boys and the Oathkeepers were free following their pardons yesterday. At the time back in 2021, you urged them to stand back and stand by. Is there now a place for them in the political conversation?
Well, we have to see they've been given a pardon. I thought their sentences were ridiculous and excessive. One of the guys took down a flag that was an anti-American flag, and he was given years in jail. I don't know the exact number, but he was given many years in jail. I thought it was very excessive. And at least the cases that we looked at, these were people that actually love our country, so we thought a pardon would be appropriate, yeah.
Mr. President, is it also...
Okay, that anti-American flag was said Black Lives Matter. There was just a flag that said Black Lives Matter. It wasn't anti-American, okay? Second, he said something really key, that the ones we looked at, in the end, it's come out since the pardons, they ended up not looking, he went against his own staff and said, just release them all. He wants to get it behind him. So he literally released everyone. They didn't look at anything. 140 of those were in jail, were there for attacking police, violently attacking police. Doesn't matter. Now they're free. They're back in the streets. And the question, if you remember, was, are they welcomed back in the political fold? Well, you don't have to look far, and I won't show it, but Stuart Rhodes was seen that very next day walking the halls of Congress and having a nice, relaxing lunch in one of the dining rooms in the House office buildings. So all this turns towards extremism comes during this turn towards extremism comes to a flood of executive orders and directives from Trump in his first 3 days that have ended all the DEI programs, frozen hiring across the federal government, ended public works that were part of the Infrastructure Act. I mean, highway projects being stopped. He even ordered Marines, 500 Marines that are on standby for the forest fires in California have now been ordered to the Mexican border with weapons loaded for their supposed border crisis. Now more than ever, we need an organized opposition party. And the race is on to lead the Democratic National Committee as part of that resistance. Obviously, we need work on the Hill. We need work everywhere. But the DNC faces their moment, and that election is on February 1st. We spoke with Ben Wickler, who was running for chairman a few weeks ago on our Sunday show. I'm excited to speak one of the candidates for vice chairman today. So let's have that conversation. I'm very excited. Let's get on with the show. Welcome. I am Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. You're right here on the Midas Touch Network and On Democracy channel. We're so excited to have you. As I mentioned, we face a very interesting moment. There's no question we're facing an extremist threat to our nation like never before. Project 2025 is literally being implemented as we speak. I mean, literally as I'm talking to you, they're implementing the craziest shit you can imagine. The Democrats, in some cases, seem to be caught a little flat-footed by much of it. I mean, many are still litigating the election with accusations floating back and forth. Many donors are angry. I mean, you can see some of the stuff that's being said. Democratic infighting increases as Trump takes center stage. The major defeats, the Democratic Party searches for answers. There's no question that we face a moment of crisis, if you will, as a party after losing the election. That is still being litigated. Suddenly, the usually sleepy. Honestly, I'm not sure if I've ever paid attention to a DNC chairmanship race or a DNC leadership race before, but that sleepy committee leadership is now on national news with a lot of prominent names having thrown their hats in the ring. I mentioned that we'd spoken to Ben Wickler before. The election's February 1st. So I'm very excited to have my friend Dr. Chris Jones join us. Chris grew up in Arkansas. He's been to the show before, attended Morehouse College on a full NASA scholarship for physics and math. Okay, after MIT, nuclear engineering, full, NASA, for God's sake, master's degree. He then went on to become an ordained minister, returned home to Arkansas. You probably remember Chris because he was the candidate for governor in 2022. After that, he started Vortex PAC to help run people in state, and now Dirt Road Democrats. I mean, he's always a busy guy. We caught up to him on here. We caught up to Chris at the DNC. Man, welcome back to the show. Congratulations on throwing your hat in the ring for the DNC vice chairmanship, brother.
My friend, thanks, man. It's great to be here. Love what you're doing. Love that you're shining a light and pushing back on the foolishness and misinformation and really, leading us forward. So thanks.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Well, look, easiest question ever. Why'd you decide to throw your hat in the ring in what has become a kind of pretty crowded race? It's a lot of big names in the race, as you know. I mean, you've gone into a hard fight in a very weird kind of race. Why are you running for vice chairman of the DNC?
Well, in part because I'm a glutton for punishment. So that's
clearly, look, you took the words out of my mouth. We've hung out a couple times, brother. You seem to enjoy this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I don't back down from a fight when it's a fight that's about something I care deeply about, and I care deeply about this country. I care deeply about democratic values. I care deeply about people that are hurting and hurting badly, and are going to be hurting even more. And so, I felt like I have a set of skills, talents, and experiences that could be beneficial in this moment and in this time. And here's why. I'll give you kind of three reasons. One, I'm a tech guy. I know technology. I understand technology. And we are on the cusp of deciding the direction we're going to go in. Yes, we have policies that matter. Yes, we have messages that matter. But the boring infrastructure stuff, to really implement those things, that's one of my sweet spots. And so I want to help modernize the party. I've said before, the Republican Party is led by a Tesla, literally, and we're still in a horse and buggy. So, and up and down. So that's one. The second thing is because, look, I campaigned across the state in Arkansas, all 75 counties, went everywhere. Didn't matter who it was, who they said they supported. I engaged with them. One of the consistent themes I heard across the board from Democrats and Republicans and independents was that, man, you're a great guy. You're awesome. You seem cool. I love your ideas and policies. But the Democratic Party, I don't understand it. I can't get with it. It's a drag on you. Now, some of that is real. It's real because there were fights for the working class that we did not engage in when we should have. There were fights for the marginalized that over the last couple of decades that we did not engage in, but we should have. And some of that is perception and the Republicans' ability to frame the narrative and keep pounding the pavement. They talk about Democrats love extreme issues and want to focus on extreme issues. It's like, come on, when you look at our legislation and our policies, we're talking about quality education, good health care, and the like. There's a Republican legislator in Arkansas who literally filed a bill. You want to talk about extremism and psychoism? He filed a bill that the Arkansas legislature would support Donald Trump's renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Right.
What does that have to do with the price of eggs? Nothing. So that's why I'm in the race as well, and I'm excited about what is to come.
And we are seeing a wholesale dismantling of the government in many ways, the government services, people losing their jobs, all those things. One thing I always heard from you when we talk is that voters, especially rural voters, but now I would say in the result of this election, even urban voters in many places like Dearborn, Michigan, for example, they don't feel heard, right? I mean, how do you address that when you say, when voters say they haven't been heard? I mean, how do you put that in your plan to move the DNC forward?
Yeah, look, let me back up and start by saying this. There are a ton of people in the vice chair race. There are several folks in the other races. When I look at the candidates that are running for DNC leadership, so leadership of the party, I am inspired, I'm impressed, I'm motivated, because you got folks all across the country who have done the work of showing up, right? So you asked the question, how do you change it around? Part of my plan, I have a plan. Right now I'm calling it a new dawn for democracy. This is a plan that will be a part clearly of the chair's plan, and it would be a part of what the DNC members want, 450 odd DNC members. But to your question, they're showing up, and I think we can have a neighborhood nexus where we build grassroots engagement districts across the country. I think we can have heartland horizons where we reconnect with rural America through a democratic revival initiative and through a young rural leaders program, because rural America, they have issues that they care about. We aren't showing up. Last thing I'll mention, because I have a couple more, is a grassroots accelerator. There's some great ideas happening on the ground across the country in key areas. I think we take those ideas, just like they do in the venture capital sector, just like they do in the entrepreneurial sector, give them some investment so they can grow and spread.
Wow. Okay. So a next piece, something you mentioned in your intro when we first started talking, that technology piece of the puzzle, it is feel like we're getting run around a little bit. The Democrats probably feel that way after this last election. What does that mean? What does that look like at the DNC? When you and I say that, you and I work in politics, maybe our viewers understand, what do we mean when we say the technology is outdated at the DNC and what needs to be done to fix that?
Yeah. Look, for starters, we need a very dynamic, real-time, rapid messaging and data hub, where we know, given Donald Trump decides that he wants to pull the security from Mike Pompeo, who's facing threats in Iran. Yeah. Well, what's our response to that? And I will say, some people that messages feel like the Democrats aren't responding enough yet, aren't responding quickly. Now, I hear that argument, but
however,
I think the first time around we responded to everything.
Right.
We can't afford that now. I think we reserve our energy. We have to be very strategic, but when we hit hard and hit with an onslaught. You have to understand the data in order to do that. You have to have a hub that's ready and accessible in order to do that. I think we could better use artificial intelligence, even down to the ground. I'm working with some folks on the ground here that have said, look, let's take the values, let's take the policies that are being pushed out, and let's use AI to generate a a regional specific plan that incorporates those values and those messages, but it also incorporates what's happening on the ground. For example, real quick, in Franklin County in Arkansas, in Charleston, Sarah decided she wanted to expand prisons. She's now trying to put a 3,000 bed prison in an area that doesn't want it. They absolutely don't want it. And not only do they not want it, but the ground is hilly and it's on stone. And the closest hospital is 30 minutes away, and there's no fire department, right? So and she wants to do it. Here's the kicker. She doesn't want to do it because she's trying to get back at people who voted for me. They voted for her 40%.
Yeah.
That's a key issue, not 40%, 80%, I'm sorry. That's a key issue that we have to push on in the context of our values and our overall messaging.
Well, that's a lot. Let's take a break for our sponsor. We had a great sponsor this week. Our friends at Lumen are sponsoring the show. We'll take a moment and come right back.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guides to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even your stress management. Not that I have stress in my life. Now, all you have to do is breathe in your Lumen first thing in the morning. You'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe in before you go on your workouts, before you go for a meal. You know exactly what's going on in your body in real time, and Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So look, your metabolism is your body's engine. We all know this. You probably learned this in health class, right? It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. I've been tracking macros and nutrients and nutrition for years as I try to maintain my health as I age. Because your metabolism is the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, better moods even, if you will. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health right in your hand. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Fred. You'll get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/Fred for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring our show this week. We really appreciate you. And man, it's a great device.
Okay. So along those same lines, a complaint I've heard a lot, and I've seen many of the leadership candidates, and I haven't, I don't know if you're weighing into, but I know a number of the leadership candidates have talked about sort of breaking the hold of the consultant class of DC. I mean, the people who send all those emails to say we're losing, and it goes to that coordination. And it seems like the consultant class that has a hold in the DNC has sort of dug itself in, win, lose, or whatever. How do you address that? Have you thought about that as well?
Oh, I've thought about it. Look, I was a candidate.
I think you have. I got to lay up because I think we've had that conversation.
Look, we have definitely had that conversation.
Yeah,
it's interesting. So during my campaign, I spoke with President Clinton multiple times. And one of the things he said to me early on, he's like, look, Chris, there are going to be 5 hot, he just made up the number 5. There are going to be 5 hot topics. Right? Just made it up. But he's so good at making up stuff, right?
That's what he does.
So it's still 5 issues. And the consultants, and he said this, they're going to tell you to avoid 3 of them and only talk about 2. He said, do not listen to that advice.
Yeah.
You show up everywhere and tell people how you feel about all 5 of them. And you listen to how they feel about all 5 of them. They might not agree with you, but they'll respect you. Right? So but the consulting class is saying you need 2 topics and that's it. And we have to run emails nonstop. And it's run text messages nonstop. It becomes overwhelming. And we are not actually getting the job done. But let me nuance it out a little bit, though, right? Because yes, the idea of us being driven by an industrial complex that isn't in touch with folks on the ground is one thing. Not all consultants are bad.
No.
If you run a campaign, right, and you know, right, I happen to be looking at one who's a phenomenal platform that is able to tell us how to engage with our voters, where to engage with them, tell us about them. That's good. What we have to do, though, and this is where my tech background comes in, we need to, before we make a decision about a consultant, let's decide what the metrics will be on the decision. How well have done in the past? How connected are they to on the ground? How able are they to lift up the message of the candidate or the organization? These are things we can put in place before any money is transferred, and it can be very transparent.
Yeah. And it's a challenge. I mean, I understand you want to rely on people who know what they're doing, but also at the same token, you've learned from your own work. There are some really smart people out in the hinterlands who have done very well at state level that can't break through, but have some really unique voices and understand those voices. Again, circling back to the first conversation, right? The rural voters, the voices of people, say in Michigan or otherwise, maybe they're not being heard by the folks who, just because that's where you're comfortable. We talked a little bit, actually, you saw the lead up to the show was about the extremism that's occurring now, the flood of executive orders. I mean, Trump and his monstrous machine came in ready to rock. We're in the middle of their timing could have been worse or better for them in a certain sense. We're going through this leadership transition on the DNC side. Obviously, there's some turmoil in the House and the Senate as they figure out their own leadership. I mean, I joked the other day that some of these these freshman members are just finding out where the hell they park, right? And so we face an onslaught. You're going to have to hit the ground running, and your colleagues at DNC are going to hit the ground running very quickly. I know you and I talked about a 100-day plan. How does that fit in as you're up against? And I'm an old combat vet. I flew helicopters in the military, and when we were building the Iraqi security forces, my old boss, General Petraeus, used to call it, building a helicopter in flight while being shot at. I think you are going to kind of face. I think the new Democrat leadership is going to face the same thing, right? You've got to build your version of the leadership team, but we are under fire. We are up against a very organized opponent, right? How do you address that quickly?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think there are parts that you can build regardless, no matter what, that you're going to need, right? We need to be able to communicate with each other and communicate with each other efficiently and effectively and everywhere. We know we have to build leaders, starting with folks who are running for school board, justice of the peace, county clerk, and those things. We know that, so we can get started recruiting. That doesn't change. We know we need to invest everywhere and do that. We can do that. However, the art of war tells us that you don't enter battle until you understand the field of play.
Yeah.
Right? And so part of what we have to do, and I'll add to that, we know we're working with a master magician. Like, Donald Trump is a master magician. And the magician will dangle something over here with their right hand, knowing they're playing a trick with their left hand. And so that's why I'm cautious to say we can't respond to everything, because it is very likely that he wants us to respond while he's doing something with his left hand. So part of what we have to do is build the infrastructure quickly and necessary that we'll need no matter what we do, while also being thoughtful and strategic about how we deploy our resources and where we deploy our resources, because we cannot have a buckshot approach. We have to have a very laser-focused, targeted approach, hit it and hit it hard. And I'll tell you, the American people want us to do that. They don't want us yelling about every single thing. They want us to focus on what matters and focus hard on that.
Yeah, and saving specifically priority things that matter to American people. Losing jobs, the economy is going to be coming on hard. We're going to see disaster with the tariffs. I mean, but that's not the party's job, right? The party. Do you think there's a misunderstanding among many of what the actual party's job is? I mean, and how do you address that? That I think a lot of people think the party's the answer to everything, but that's not really the party's job, is it?
Not at all. In fact, the DNC has one job, and that's to elect the president.
Right.
That's it. The DGA, Democratic Governors Association, is to elect governors, and there's a DLGA. So there are all these organizations, right?
Yeah, DCCC, DSCC,
and on and on and on. That's historical. Now, in this context, I think the DNC has to play a real leadership role. I think folks in the DNC now realize, you hear it from all the candidates pretty much, that in order to win the presidency, you got to win down ballot. And in order to win down ballot, you got to show up everywhere and invest everywhere. And so I think that's the reality of it. What people think about the DNC is that it shapes policy, it shapes messaging, it shapes everything. It doesn't.
Yeah.
What we need from the DNC, though, is a true leader partner, and a leader partner that can frame things for folks, that can build infrastructure for the entire party, and that can say, I am sitting in a seat of leadership alongside other leaders in the party.
And that's the key. And there wasn't, look, and I think Jamie Harrison did a lot. They did invest in the states, right? That's been a complaint for a lot. You and I both live in red states. We did see investment, especially near the end there when the Harris campaign gave money as well. So, I mean, there was a state strategy. I think it's not we have to throw the entire bath out, right? I think there's this belief that there was this massive failure. I know electoral results are everything, but it's hard not to say that Jamie Harris and his team didn't accomplish a lot of good things. What do you keep going? Yeah.
Well, let me say this real quick. To give kudos to Jamie Harrison, because he showed up. He showed up and he invested. He understands what it means to run in the South because he ran in the South. He's from the South. That doesn't mean also that he wasn't facing a lot of forces. Let's be clear. To your earlier conversation, the consulting class is strong, and the consulting class is what tells us let's focus in on the key swing states, and let's go where we know we can win. And if there's a candidate in a district in Arkansas, Arkansas is a red state, so let's not worry about that too much. That's the context with which he was fighting against. And I'll tell you, he did a really good fight. And now we see that it actually leads to wins. We didn't win the presidency, but at the state level, we did pretty well. We clearly could have done better. But in Arkansas, look, we defended every state legislative seat in Arkansas, which is unheard of in the last 10 years. We picked up a seat for the first time in 18 years and elected the first Hispanic state legislator in the history of Arkansas. Wow. So there's things that are going right. That's why I say we can build infrastructure while being strategic. And part of the strategic is find the things that are going right, put them in an accelerator so they can expand and scale, because that's what we want to replicate.
Well, I love it. Now, the final thing I'll ask about, and then I'll let you go. No, you got to go because you're running for vice chair of the DNC. That misinformation and disinformation. You've mentioned that a couple of times. We saw that opening of the show, the extremism now that is running rampant. Suddenly the Oath Keepers weren't there to overthrow the government; they were there to protect. It's kind of ludicrous. That is a battle you have to, and frankly, it kind of goes to the last question, the misinformation of what the DNC's job is even. So you've mentioned that. I know I saw it on your website. How do you fight disinformation, and what do you see as the vice chair's role in that?
Look, I think it's a prominent role for all of us, and it's key for me because I think one of the most fundamental and important things that we have to deal with is misinformation and disinformation. We can have the best policies ever. We can do the best work ever on behalf of people. Here's a great example. I think it's a great example. The Biden administration sent money to the states in the health sector to expand nurses because we have a nursing shortage. We especially have a nursing shortage in Arkansas. So they sent millions of dollars to Arkansas so that we can expand the training of nurses. You know what Sarah did? She put out an announcement that said she authorized millions of dollars. And then she showed up at an event with a big check with her name, not once mentioning the fact that it was the Democrats and the Biden administration that did it. So to me, that's the headwind that we face, particularly in red areas, is that the National Democrats may be doing a good job, but the message is hitting the ground. Why? Because we're not on digital media, on YouTube, TikTok for as long as we have it, Instagram, Facebook, as bad as it is, our own podcasts, we're not engaged at the level we need to be engaged, or traditional media. I write a weekly syndicated column. It's in 20 local or more than 20 local newspapers in Arkansas. Before I started writing it, there wasn't a Democratic voice in the paper. Now, local folks who still only read papers can read what I'm writing on a weekly basis. So I think that's how we directly address misinformation, by showing up, by engaging, and by creating the infrastructure to allow folks to do it. Last thing I'll say is, part of creating the infrastructure is supporting programs like On Democracy. I mean, you're out there fighting the fight. You're out there doing the work. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have great folks like you that are doing it all the time. So what if we said this platform is a platform that is fighting misinformation? So let's give it the kind of love and attention that the Republicans give Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. Why not? That's, I think, what we're missing. And that's what we have to do.
Yeah, you read my mind. It is going everywhere. I mean, if we do walk away with one thing, that was it. Is speak to everyone, every chance you get, and it may be minus touch with 3.6 million. It may be the On Democracy channel with 10,000, but we are reaching certain audiences. They're different audiences, and that's okay, right? So, well, Chris, man, as always, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us here on the show. It's been always a pleasure. I wish you the best of luck. I guess we'll know in a week or two, and then if I know you at all, you'll be running. And I can't wait to talk to you as vice chair.
Yeah.
And
look,
wish you the best of luck, brother.
The fight regardless. I'm gonna be in the fight regardless. I'm here.
Either way, man. Well, good seeing you again. Good luck, brother.
All right, brother.
Cheers. Well, it's a great conversation with Chris, as always. I always joke he's my favorite pastor, rocket scientist, and that's a rare thing now these days. The race is on. It's a little bit opaque. We won't know who it is or who it's not till the very end, because it is only the members of the DNC and the voting members who they are, and we don't necessarily know that publicly. But either way, we wish them the best luck. But we'll know here in the next couple of weeks. All I can say, folks, I know it's hard to maintain your sanity right now. I have sat in bed with my partner saying, "Ooh," so just the best you could do. Just focus on what is in your circles. Focus, like my friend Chris does, on his state, whatever you can do. There are 31 states or so having local elections and statewide elections this year. That's a great place to start if you're looking forward. As always, I have to remind you, be sure to subscribe to our friends at the MySide. Of course, I'd love you to subscribe to the On Democracy channel on YouTube. That's On Democracy channel on YouTube, as well as all of our On Democracy social media channels. We have great new shows premiering. We've got the new On Democracy Sunday. It's doing really great, having a lot of great conversations. You can't miss that if you subscribe to On Democracy channel. If you love getting your podcast the proper way, don't forget to check us out on Amazon, everywhere. Amazon, let's see, Apple, Spotify. We're available at all those great places. Thank you to our sponsor, Lumen, this week. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe, be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, say hello. I'd love to hear from you guys. In the meantime, hey, all we can do is keep up the fight. We've got democracy to save, so let's keep at it. I'm Fred Wellman here for On Democracy. We'll see you again soon.